Okay, the Planning Commission meeting of June 19, 2019 will come to order. I'll rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the Secretary will call the roll.
Commissioner Tolson?
Present.
Commissioner Castleberry?
Present.
Commissioner Rice? Absent. Vice Chairperson Mann? Absent. Chairperson Hodge?
Here. Approval of the agenda. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Castleberry. Is there a second?
Second.
Made by Commissioner Tolson. There being no objection, the agenda is approved. May I have a motion to amend for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Tolson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Commissioner Castleberry. Absent objection, the minutes are approved. Declaration of conflict. The Secretary will read the declaration of conflict.
If any member of the Planning Commission may have a conflict of interest or any reason why that member must abstain from consideration of any matter on this agenda, he or she should so declare at this time.
Are there any declarations of conflict?
No.
Very good. There being none, we'll press on. Public statements. This is the time allotted for public statements or comments on all items other than public hearing items. I have cards that appear to be only for agenda item number 11A. Are there any persons who wish to speak under this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll push forward. Consent calendar. I don't believe we have a consent calendar tonight.
Correspondence.
Oh, did I skip one?
Yeah.
Correspondence. Is there any correspondence from the Deputy Director, City Planner?
No, there's not.
Well, in that case then. There is no continued business. Public hearings. This is the time and place set for a public hearing on the consideration of GPA 102 SPS 7, Amendment Number 27, ZS 742, CUPS 823, and the project's mitigated negative declaration. Are there any ex parte communications to report?
None.
No.
May we have an oral report from staff?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Hodge. This is a project that's been around in the planning cycle for a little while. We had this item went to in October 2017 to the City Council as part of the General Plan Amendment pre-screening, in which the City Council recommended approval. Since that time, the applicant also filed a preliminary application where staff worked with the applicant on its design, and then they formally submitted the formal application, and now we're bringing it forward to you tonight. Senior Planner Jennifer Santos is the case planner, and she'll be making a presentation. Jennifer?
Good evening, Commissioner Hodge and members of the Planning Commission. The applicants and property owners, Richard and Kathleen Parkinson, own Premier Interior Development, Incorporated, a general contracting company that is located a short distance from the project site off of Chambers Lane. The 2.87 acre site is vacant and is located at 1,000 feet west of Caper Lane at the south side of Cochran Street, between First Street and Madera Road. The Parkinson's request includes construction of 2 industrial buildings that total 31,124 square feet to operate their general contracting business in one of the buildings. The applicants originally presented a general plan pre-screening request to the City Council on October 30th, 2017 to consider the change in the general plan designation. The City Council authorized this request and they submitted their application on October 30th, 2018. The applicants are requesting that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council for the following items. A general plan amendment to change the land use designation from commercial to industrial, a specific plan amendment to change the West End specific plan land use designation from sub-regional retail to general industrial, a zone change from sub-regional retail specific plan to general industrial specific plan, and a conditional use permit to construct the two buildings and for the operation of their general contracting business. The property is bordered by Cochrane Street to the north and the Southern Pacific Railroad to the south. The surrounding land use designations include commercial to the north and to the west. The property to the north is Home Depot, and the property to the west is owned by Home Depot. However, this site to the west is undevelopable due to the substandard lot size. To the south and east are general industrial, right here. And these parcels down here to the south are currently vacant. However, recently there was an approval for a six building industrial complex here. The proposed use is currently not allowed under the general commercial land use designation. The applicants are requesting to change this designation to industrial, and the purpose of the industrial designation is to provide for an opportunity of adequate variety of sizes and locations of industrial parcels. The proposal meets this intent and is consistent with the surrounding industrial uses to the south and to the east. The specific plan amendment to sub-regional retail, the specific plan amendment from sub-regional retail to general industrial is consistent with the proposed general plan amendment and zone change. This will result in new industrial uses that are adjacent to other industrial uses. The requested zone change from sub-regional retail specific plan to general industrial specific plan will also be consistent with the proposed amendments. Further, this will allow the requesting general contracting business to operate on-site with a conditional use permit. Access to the site is from Cochrane Street by one driveway that is located on the eastern portion of the property. Both buildings will be identical in design, consisting of 15,562 square feet. There will be 101 parking spaces and 2 loading areas that will be located at the rear of the buildings. Between the buildings will be an open patio area for the employees and visitors, and a covered outdoor storage area. The patio area will be located at the front side of the buildings, and the storage area will be located at the rear side of the buildings right here. There are 2 trash enclosures that are located on the east side and also on the west side that will serve both buildings. There is an underground water retention basin here that will be stored in the driveway of the western portion of the parking lot. Each of the 2 buildings will be 2-story in height. The first floor will consist of 7,902 square feet of storage area and 4,118 square feet of office space on the first floor. The second story will include 3,542 square feet of office space, and the rest will be open to the below warehouse and storage area. And both of the floor plans for each buildings are identical. Approximately 60 new low-water trees and assorted shrubs and ground cover will be installed throughout the site. The minimum required landscaping for the site is 15%, and approximately 29% of the site will be covered in landscaping. As required in the general plan, the landscaping will include a 10-foot wide enriched parkway with a 5-foot wide sidewalk. Both buildings will face the parking lot. The north elevation shows the view of the patio area, right here, that is between the buildings, and the bottom elevations depict the architectural details that are applied to all sides of the buildings. These renderings depict the rear loading and outdoor storage areas that will not be seen from Cochrane Street and will sit approximately 10 to 13 feet above the Southern Pacific Railroad right-of-way. The primary colors of the 2 industrial buildings will consist of different shades of gray, and the architectural features will include accented wall panels of exposed concrete and stone form liners. The window trim and shade awnings will be dark blue in color. On May 9th, the applicant presented their request to Neighborhood Council 1. Both the executive board and the audience members unanimously recommended approval. In staff's opinion, the project complies with the findings referenced in the staff report and recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council. This concludes staff's presentation and will be available for any questions.
Questions of staff?
I have 2 questions. So first, in regards to the sidewalks, they don't see any sidewalks on Cochran Street. I do know that the parcel next to this location does not have any sidewalks either. Was this not required by Public Works?
As part of the general plan and the specific plan, that calls out a 5-foot wide sidewalk. And it is, and they're proposing, there's also access that was required onto the site. The
Okay.
property to the east, it didn't have a sidewalk because it was built back in the 80s, but further east, there is a sidewalk.
Okay. All right. And then my last question was to the rear, the fencing to the rear. Is there any, I couldn't find the height on the fencing to the rear facing the railroad tracks. Do we have, what would the height be?
So the wrought iron fencing will be 6 feet in height, but then there will be a block wall below it, which
Okay.
will act as a retaining wall. The height limit for fencing is 8 feet along a railroad corridor.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Commissioner Tolson?
The fenced parking area on the west side, the drawings show just general parking. Is there, what kind of vehicles would be parked there? Do we know?
That would be occasional company vehicles. However, they place a condition in there that during business hours, those parking spaces are to be clear for employees and visitors. And the gate opens up, but it will be opened up during business hours.
Okay. And I had a question about the sidewalk, but that was just answered. And then the level from the Cochrane down to the level of the buildings how much difference in the height is it about?
I estimate from anywhere from 2 to 8 feet going downwards, and they're going to be filling that in with, as a part of the grade, they're going to be raising that up.
Okay. And there's not going to be any water table issues with that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. That was it for me.
Ms. Santos, I have a couple. Let's start with an easy one first. I was kind of perplexed by this. On page 3 of the staff report, it refers to removing all of the 17 trees, 16 pepper trees and the 1 jacaranda, correct?
Correct.
Condition, I believe it was B26, found on page 36 of the staff report, references the applicant must revise the landscape design by moving the jacaranda trees farther into the property so the canopy of those trees at maturity do not overhang the sidewalk and right-of-way. So are they moving all the trees? Are they keeping some of the trees? I'm a little confused.
I believe they're referencing to the proposed jacaranda trees that they're showing on the landscape plan. Those will need to be outside of the parkway.
Okay, so these are jacaranda trees that they would be replacing as up to the fair market value of the trees that they're removing? Okay, so there being that 1 jacaranda that's being removed, I think that was a little confusing, but as long as everybody else seems to understand. So I'm understanding on page 2 of the staff report under project description, when it identified the number of square feet for storage versus the square feet for office, and then the numbers didn't equal the first floor and the second floor. I think you answered the question by saying that there's going to be parts of the first floor that go up to the ceiling on the second floor. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, there was some discussion at length, and I thought it was a very nicely written portion of the staff report talking about the benefits of the industrial space and the interest that the city has in these spaces, et cetera. But what I found missing was any discussion of the minus of the loss of the sub-regional retail that might be involved as sort of the balancing of this. So we have the benefit of the new industrial site, but of course we're trading out space that would otherwise, under the West End specific plan, have been sub-regional retail. Now, I realized also that there probably haven't been a long line of folks coming and applying for sub-regional retail for this space. But at least at a minimum, if I could have some sort of an analysis as to what it is that we seem to be trading in exchange for the industrial designation.
I know in the general plan, this part of the sub-regional zone, they call for more large, big box types of retail. The site constraints on this that's where it kind of meets more of the findings for going towards industrial. However, there wasn't an analysis done on the loss of the commercial space. There is a lot of vacant commercial space throughout the city, and I know as part of the direction, there's been a concern of the loss of also the limited amount of industrial space as well. And with the surrounding uses being industrial, it can meet the findings to be consistent with the surrounding uses.
Okay. The report refers to a courtyard front portion and then a covered storage area separating the two buildings. Do you recall that?
So there's a wall that separates the front courtyard to the outdoor storage area, and there's a roof on the outdoor storage area with the gates in the back.
Okay, and that would be allowed, the storage would be allowed underneath that covering, correct?
Right.
Is there a condition that precludes storage otherwise in the back area?
No.
Was there any discussion about having a condition to preclude there being, that area being used as storage?
No.
If there was storage in the back, could you point to, on the map that you have there, where the loading docks are?
So this is where the loading docks are, on this side right here. And then this is all flat, and then there's storage. This is where the storage area would be.
Did the fire department, that area on the south between the wall and the southern wall of the buildings and the boundary wall or fence, did the fire department have any thoughts or ideas with respect to making that area vacant so that they could get back there and through there in the event they needed to?
The way the project is designed, it meets the fire district standards for access. So
Okay.
there was no issue.
The reason I'm asking these questions, this property is not particularly far from Madera. And it is, although it's elevated from the property below, and the property below to the south is ultimately going to be industrial as well. I'm mindful of the opportunity for there being some unsightliness to the rear portion of the building. The front of the building is very nice. I'm concerned about this is going to be a fence as opposed to a wall, correct, on the south elevation? Okay, so we can talk about that a little bit later, perhaps. Oh, lighting. I didn't see, is there any envisioned lighting on the south side, the south elevation of the property?
So, yes, and as part of the condition, the applicant's required to submit a photometric plan to ensure that it meets the lighting standards and for site security. These are, right here on the materials board, these are the proposed lightings. This is the wall-mounted lighting, and these are for the freestanding lights.
Okay, that's condition A17, I've seen it. But I'm not sure that answers my question. Is there any signage like, whatever the name of the company is?
Oh, yes, they are also, yes, they submitted a sign program as part of it, and there's also a condition that we have to review and approve it. The sign will actually be, sorry. The sign will be, it'll be identification sign with the address on it, and it will be right here.
Okay, and that's it?
Yes. There'll be signs on the building as well, and if they would just be storefront signage that you paste onto the window.
Okay, but nothing on the, you understand my concern. Here, this is up in this elevation, it's highly visible.
Right.
I just don't want there, I'm concerned in bringing up the issue of whether or not there's going to be the kind of signage. We don't know who the other, we understand who's going to go in building one of the buildings, and it's, at this point, a subcontracting services company. But at some point, it might be different, and then you've got the other property where somebody may want to come in and have signage. Do we have, on the rear portion, for whatever purpose, do we have a condition that precludes that, or does the city ordinances with respect to lighting preclude that?
So there's sign standards in place for in the municipal code, and also they're going to be submitting a sign program that will take care of the signage on the rear portions of the building.
Okay, at this point, there's no condition.
There is a condition actually on.
Well, there's A17 regarding the photometric plan and everything, but that's, see, you understand my concern is that the photometric plan goes pretty much to 1/2 candle foot at the perimeter of the building as opposed to something on the side of the building which doesn't particularly provide a measurable light just off the property line but might be seen from the south side of the city.
Okay.
Okay, we can get to that if you don't have that particularly, or maybe you can look that up and we can go on at this point. I don't have any further questions at this time. Any other questions? Okay. No, I have it. Oh, I see. All right. My map fell off. Okay, we will now open the public testimony portion of the hearing. I have 3 cards. Well, actually, before I get to the cards, is just simply, would the applicant like to present the project?
Would. Thank you for hearing this tonight and letting us make our presentation. My name is Rick Parkinson.
Karen, would you raise the, it broke?
I'll squat.
We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars so that thing would rise, but I apologize. Apparently it doesn't. Thank you for speaking up.
Very good. Well, I am Rick Parkinson. My wife Kathy is here in the back behind me, along with a couple of my family members. We are the Parkinson family, and we live here in Simi Valley. We've been here close to 20 years, and certainly are very familiar with Simi and live and work here. So we currently have our business located in Simi Valley in Chambers Lane Business Park, which is just to the east of this location. And our desire is to build these buildings and occupy one of them, as the report says. I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of our business, and as you pointed out, we don't have a lot of control unless it's conditioned on our future tenant. But I hope to communicate the type of contractor that we are and the type of work that we do, because every contractor is different, right? So these 2 buildings are designed identical. It is not our desire to have signage for our own business, and we would welcome a condition if there's some sort of limitation on that. We don't want neon flashing lights on the front or the back. We don't advertise even in our current building. We don't intend to do that. It will be limited. So the signage will be address identification, units and suite numbers. It's not meant to have anything. I could imagine I think in our sign program we have a name of the business on the window or some such thing. But it would be downplayed, and we can certainly encourage that for the future tenant. I want to talk about our business, the nature of our business, because we have a few minutes here tonight. We do high-end retail and restaurant construction. So we aren't your typical home builder or TI type of contractor that builds offices, although we do some of that. We do churches and nonprofits and airports. We do a lot of work down at LAX. If anybody's traveled through LAX in the last 10 years, or actually I started working at LAX in 1984. So I've been there a few years. It's a ongoing, endless project down there. So if there's a new restaurant down there or a new retail store or a duty-free store, it's likely that we've built it. This is the international terminal at LAX. This is the type of projects that we do. Very unusual finishes with metals and glass and all that type of thing. And so the nature of what we do in our location is really project management and estimating and administration matters. But then we'll receive shipments of furniture and various building components, oftentimes in crates. In fact, our warehouse right now is filled with about 35 crates of stuff that have come in from all over the world. So we do a lot of material handling in that regard, but it's not metal studs and drywall and the traditional type of things that you might think about in a general contracting business. We don't put anything outside. We don't intend to put anything outside. We built the covered storage for the occasional truck that we might load that can't fit in the warehouse or some such thing. So there's no proposal to have any outside storage other than vehicles parking. We would intend to possibly park a vehicle outside over the weekend, and that's why we put the fenced area in. So again, if there was a condition that said no outside storage other than within our covered storage that's behind a fence, that wouldn't be a problem for us, and we wouldn't want our tenant to do that either. Again, high-end focus on integrity and just quality. It's what we do. I've been at this business nearly 40 years, and my kids are now in the business, and kind of it's going on to the, actually my dad was in a similar business before he passed away, so this will be the third generation. In fact, my grandson's here tonight, so maybe it'll be a fourth generation someday here in Simi Valley, unless he plays baseball instead, which he loves to do. So if you're a Dodger fan, then Cade will be your fan. This is, again, some examples. This is Terminal 2 at LAX, duty-free stores at LAX, gift and news stores in the Terminal 1. But we work in all the terminals down there. We also build the high-end first-class lounges. We did the lounge for American Airlines. We're currently building a lounge for American Express in the international terminal. We built the private suites for Gavin DeBecker, which is a private terminal at LAX where they call it the paparazzi-free location. It's the nature of what we do, and we'd like our building to reflect that type of image. So we do all aspects of design, build, pre-construction, all things soup to nuts. So we don't have staff architects, but we do employ architects as part of our design build team, architects and engineers. So this is, a lot of this was covered in the staff report. We did work with the staff and city council and many members over the last couple of years to determine whether this site might fit for industrial. You see kind of the purple colored areas are industrial uses in that little orange piece there that says site is still zoned retail. We made the proposal to convert it to industrial. It seemed to be well received up until this point. So I don't know the answer to your question on the other matter, but it does seem to fit with the adjacent uses. It's a little bit of an awkward site. It's only 3 acres. And so it's limited to its use. We really tried to maximize the site. We spent a lot of time and money on analyzing the ground stability. This piece of land was used by Home Depot to flip a lot of the spoils when they built Home Depot. So ground stabilization, we spent a lot of time and money trying to analyze that and determine if it was even buildable, and we feel at this point we have a solid project to propose. A couple views of what it looks like, and our building will sit just below grade of the street, and so this berm will be lowered. There's the large trees that will have to be removed, unfortunately. We tried to work around that one particular one, but we've aligned the driveway with Home Depot so that from a traffic standpoint it fits, and the reality is we need to remove the trees, and we will replace them with similar trees or whatever we've got here. But I believe that's the jacaranda, where there's new jacarandas going in, and there's at least one coming out. That's an aerial. It's that finger obviously to the right of the railroad tracks, and you can see, again, the industrial use on the left, and I believe there's a proposed project up in this area. So really we're talking about this piece up to about here, and this part, as it gets steeper down here, is really not usable. These are the figures. There's nothing fantastic about that, other than we are overbuilt for office for a typical warehouse. So standard would say build a big warehouse and a minimum amount of office. We have a few more people than normal that would have, so I designed it that way. And we have adequate parking with the 101 parking spaces to support it. We feel like that would be desirable by a future tenant as well. Just a pretty picture. You can see the driveways aligned there. And honestly, I don't believe a sidewalk is shown in this photograph, but it is a condition that we put a sidewalk clear down to here, and I'll bring that up again in a minute. As you pointed out, there is no sidewalk to the east, and there is one across the street. Seeing that view, you can kind of see the courtyard there and kind of get a view of the buildings to the south. I checked it because I was able to see the staff report on the proposed building, and they will sit below, will be above those buildings, so, or at least half of our building will be above their building. So it does sit up above the proposed development down below should it be built. This is a view of the loading dock area. So this area in here would be truck high loading dock, but then this ramps up so that you could actually drive a forklift in and out of the building, and there's a warehouse door on that angled wall that's on the back side there. So it will be a loading area, but primarily it's a drive-through for fire and for guests and visitors. There won't be any storage back in that area, at least not within the driveway. There's a 30-foot driveway there. You can see some of the lighting on the building up here, and that's on all the sides of the building in addition to the parking lot lights. So it should have good security. Another view of the patio area. You asked about the wall across the south side of the property line. That's this long distance here. It goes from 0 to 13 or 14 feet and then back down to 0. Again, a low wall to keep vehicles from driving off of it because it's quite high in the middle. Maybe 30 inches high of concrete, and then wrought iron up to 6 or possibly 7 feet, but it would be see-through fencing up above 30 inches. We want to fence it because of the homeless situation. We don't want people coming in the backside. Landscape, I think we already talked a little bit about that. Just a few more views. This gives you an idea of the elevations. If you look at the lower part of the plan, this area here is near the driveway, so right about here. And as you come down further on the property, it gets lower as far as the adjacent, because this Cochrane is going up, and so as it comes down to the bottom, it's fairly flat. And then the further up Cochrane you go, the lower the site is by comparison to the road. A couple of elevations, both the front and the back. So here's the rear elevation. You can see the roll-up doors there on each building. That's on the angle wall and the storage area here. And I think that's about it. Let's see. Yeah, that's all I got. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I'm able. And I have our architect and landscape architect here if
Questions of the applicant?
I do, a couple questions. On your website, it lists multiple locations around the world.
Oh, well, we have two offices. We have an office here in Simi Valley, and we have an office in Honolulu. About 40% of our business is in the Hawaiian Islands. We work in Waikiki and the various shopping centers. We do hotels and retail stores there. I'm currently working in Guam. We're working in different locations. We recently finished up work at the Austin International Airport. So we do travel a little bit, but primarily it's the Pacific Rim. So I've worked in most airports from Alaska to San Francisco down to Atlanta and all points. But primarily we're Southern California with a good, better than 50% of our business.
This is where we started?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Northridge and keep moving a little west. I tell folks if I keep it up, I'll retire at the beach.
And then how many employees would be working out of this property?
We have 50 full-time equivalent employees. That includes our Hawaii office currently. We wouldn't ever exceed that here. I think we have a number of, I don't recall, but it was in our report, I want to say 30, 34 or something like that at the most. Currently, we have about 16 in our current location.
So the 101 is pretty sufficient.
Well, if you divide that by the two buildings, and then you allow for visitors, we should have ample parking.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Any takers at this point on the other property, the lease on?
The other building, we haven't pushed it hard. Gary Seaton's actually out here out in the audience, and Gary and I have worked closely, and I've known Gary for at least the last 20 years. So he tells me they're lined up, but we haven't specifically lined anybody up, nor will we intend to do that until we're under construction.
Okay. And then what was the time frame on your construction? I think the 2 slides back or something?
We're prepared to submit for plan check, assuming that we get approval tonight. The documents are 98% complete, ready to go. So we just want to cross a T and dot an I and make sure that we clear this hurdle, and we will submit prior to the city council approval if we receive your approval tonight.
That was it for me.
Thank you. Mr. Parkinson, thank you for your presentation. I just want to confirm, so there's no question, and we don't have to call you back up. You're A-OK with the condition for no lighted signage, backlighted or otherwise, on the rear elevation of the property, and you're A-OK with no storage in the rear of the property other than, actually it's no storage, other than the covered area and in the interior of the building.
Correct. Let me be clear that even today, we have a truck that's loaded with crates ready to be delivered that's parked in the parking lot. And so after store hours, it's parked in Chambers Lane right now. So if that's defined as storage, then that would be a problem for me. But no storage that would be racking or any kind of materials that would be in the parking lot. So however the staff would
Off
like
of
to
a
write
truck.
that,
Very good.
I'd be fine with it.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you very much. I have another card from Eric Lind. Mr. Lind, do you wish to speak? So I changed, they do not wish to speak to wishes to speak?
Well, it's okay. I'll just be brief. I'm Eric Lind, EC Lind Architect. I'm the project architect. And just a few comments. I think the design concept for this project came from Mr. Parkinson. And he did a wonderful job of communicating to us what he was looking for in his vision for his headquarters, if you will, which he wants to have a presence here in Simi Valley going forward. So he worked with us. He gave us a concept that had basically this look, and we worked with him on the articulation, the windows, the colors, the textures, trying to take an industrial building, which typically, from my experience, my clients will be devoid of detail. They want to go away. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to be found, and they like to be somewhere in the city where nobody knows what they're doing. So this is an industrial building with more of an office presence to it. And I think that's a wonderful thing for him and for you. So we were very excited to get involved with this and work through this design. We, basically just tweaked it from his concept because it worked. And so I hope that you see the effort here and you see what he's bringing to the city in this location. And it's a difficult site to build on. And he mentioned the problems with the soil, so we're working through that, and we've come out the other side, and we have a workable solution for that. So we think we're turning a very difficult site that is somewhat of a problem in the city with the way it looks now and with the homeless people that we've noticed into this. So we're very happy to be part of it, and if anybody has any questions about more detail about the design, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Mr. Lind, I hate to do this to you, but I hadn't heard any problems yet about the soil, and you said you're working through those, and I appreciate that you are, and I'm sure that the city wouldn't approve something they thought that there was some problems with sloughing, but what is the problem with this soil?
Well, I wish we had our soils engineer here to answer more detail, but there's not going to be problems. It's just that we had to analyze the soil, as we always do, and because of the spoils materials and other things that have been placed on this site over the years, I think that we had to address that issue. So we're doing a lot of over-excavation and recompaction, and as we build up the pad, the buildable pad. And so there's just an extensive list of reports that have gone back and forth with the Public Works Department, and they're satisfied, and our engineers are satisfied, and so, we've given that criteria to our structural engineer, and we've moved forward. So, but initially, it was, we looked at the initial analysis, and they thought it might be somewhat difficult to build on, and I think we've come through that. So,
Very good.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gary Seaton,
Yes, sir.
wish to speak?
Only if I need to clarify why the downzoning is happening.
I don't have any further questions on that. Does anyone wish to address that? I guess you have the night off.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Keith Kelly?
Good evening. My name is Keith Kelly. I'm a local resident. And I just had one concern. We've seen throughout the city, notably in front of the town center and more recently on Alamo, where we've had hillsides slip, usually after heavy rains and whatnot. And so I want to know, especially in the case of the retaining walls on the edge of the property and the steeply graded hillsides on the other edge, what provision has been made for drainage to take care of those excess water years, so that we don't have the retaining walls blowing out and in this case, I guess, going onto the tracks or whatever. It just seems that's a problem that has not been adequately addressed in the past locally, and want to make sure it doesn't happen with this project in the future. That's it.
Very good. Thank you. I have no further cards. Does anyone else in the chamber wish to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public portion of the so excited about all these issues, and I forgot, I've lost myself in the script. We'll close the public hearing. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments regarding statements made during the public hearing? Probably not, since they were all, well, do you wish to answer Mr. Kelly's question, or have you already?
I can tell you that we looked at that extensively.
Mr. Parkinson, if I could ask you to come to the podium.
Yeah, the question came up about retaining walls and drainage and all of that. There is a significant stormwater management.
I'm sorry, if you could speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry, speak to the microphone? Okay. So we've looked at it extensively. It's an engineered system, as well as the retaining walls, a highly engineered system to address that. So we saw the same thing come down near the town center, wouldn't want to repeat that. So I feel like we've addressed that and addressed it quite significantly.
Well, let me ask you a couple of fast questions on that.
Sure.
The staff report refers to the water draining naturally from east to west.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
It does now, and there's a storm drain on the west end of the property.
Okay. So your project would lay out hard surfaces over the majority of the now vacant, now uncovered space, the now natural space, and would direct all that water into a sewage system so that the water would run off into that system and not down the hill, correct?
Correct. It's
So
retained on site and seeped out to an existing structure that's at the west end of the property.
Is it your understanding and position that this will actually cause less water to be eroded down the south side of the slope as opposed to it is now?
Well, I believe it would, only because we're managing it, and we're managing any significant amount of water underground in a retention basin, so I would suggest that it would be managed better than it is currently.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. If there are no further questions, we will close the public testimony portion of the meeting. Are there any comments or questions from members of the Planning Commission?
I've got one question. We talked about it earlier about the sidewalk, and then some of the rendition pictures show no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk to the east of this property, and there's nothing to the west. I'm just quite sure what the need is to have a sidewalk.
Oh, okay. I've thought on that, but I mean, Commissioner Castleberry, you want to respond to that?
My only thought is that we're trying to build a more walkable community, so to have the sidewalk in place so that we can finish, there's only one parcel that's missing the sidewalk along the south side of Cochrane. So when the time comes that either the city's able to secure some sort of funding to finish that sidewalk, it would be nice. So if there are any residents that could bike or walk to work, it would be nice to have it in place.
Yeah, I agree with him. There's a condition in the staff report that refers to, I think it's a 5 or a 5.5 foot wide sidewalk, and irrespective of the nature of the renderings, I think that would the conditions control. So I'm satisfied that we are going to have that. And I agree with Commissioner Castleberry that this is how you start and this is how you continue. And so we do this, and maybe it doesn't lead to anywhere particularly right now, but that's right now. So I'm happy with that.
Perfect.
Any other comments, questions?
That's it.
Mr. Castleberry?
No, just some comments. I'm happy to see solar on top of both buildings. That's kind of my theme at this point, is asking for solar, so I'm glad it's already there. I think in regards to the rezoning, we do see a high commercial vacancy rate, and we're seeing such a low industrial vacancy rate. The rezoning makes sense, and I've said in past commission meetings that typically when we're looking at rezoning a parcel, it gives me pause, and I want to think, and I like to see some sort of need in the community, and in this sense, this is going to bring some good paying jobs, hopefully allow an expansion of a local business, which I'm happy to see. I think the design and the landscaping is great. I really had no concerns. It's a beautiful building. And to echo on a point I did hear about this, there is a significant homeless population in the area. So the wall with the fencing on top, I think, is going to be great to secure the rail corridor there and try and start to reduce some of the trespassing issues we have there. But other than that, I have no concerns with the project. I would like to see the two conditions that Chairperson Hodge wanted to add. I think that would basically just nicely tie up the project.
Thank you. And Mr. Parkinson, thank you very much for understanding the thoughts and processes with respect to those two conditions that were brought up. I think that you already had the storage issue well in hand in advance. And one of the things that, if we're doing our jobs correctly, I think is we make sure that at some point in your future you may grow again and move somewhere else, or who knows what. Or everybody may go play baseball, and then you don't need it anymore. But we're looking at long-term running on this, and if there was a condition specifically to no rear storage other than in the covered area, I think that will assist in the beautification and also ultimately lead to some safety benefits for the property. Also, and I'm very glad that you're okay with the limitation on the lighting, because we don't need folks on up in the bridle path looking over and seeing these lights. This is something which is an issue. So I thank you very much for agreeing to do that. As far as some of the analysis and the findings, for changing, I specifically find that this project is in the public interest. I don't see anything that's detrimental to health, safety, or welfare. I think the land use designation from general retail to general industrial is in the public interest. Consistent with the findings that were in the staff report. I also specifically find that specific plan amendment, zone change, and conditional use permit are consistent with the purposes, intent, and goals, and policies and programs of our land use plan. I agree with the analysis that is provided in the staff report with respect to the specific plan amendment, and the conditional use permits are consistent with the guidelines that were identified therein. And also the CEQA requirements. I was kind of surprised when I saw that there were specifically identified environmental issues. Really? I mean, and then it turned out to be specifically this issue with respect to Native American artifacts and other burial considerations, and that those apparently have been properly mitigated. So I can support the project. Okay. Chair will now entertain a motion. I'm sorry, wait, take a step back. May I please have a reading of the resolution and include as amended?
Resolution SBPC 08-2019, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Simi Valley recommending to the City Council approval of GPA 102 ZS 742, CUPS 823, and the project's mitigated negative declaration to construct two industrial buildings that total 31,124 square feet for a general contracting business on a 2.87 acre parcel located at the south side of East Cochran Street, approximately 1,000 feet west of Capper Lane, 600 to 620 East Cochran Street. As
Okay.
amended.
Very good. Now I'm going to remind the commissioners that there are multiple votes that are going to be taken as to each of the individual amendments being made. So looking at page 18, item 13 and 14, the chair will now entertain a motion.
I move to adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of GPA-102 ZS 742, CUP-S832 and adopting the project's mitigated negative declaration.
As amended? Is there a second?
Second.
A motion was made by Commissioner Tolson and seconded by Commissioner Castleberry. Call for the vote. The motion passes. May I please have a reading of the resolution for SPS 7 Amendment Number 27?
Resolution SVPC 092019, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Simi Valley recommending to the City Council approval of specific plan amendment number SPS 7, amendment number 27, and the project's mitigated negative declaration.
Now, I don't recall if the conditions that we came up with affect this particular,
No.
no, they don't. All right, very good.
This is just for the zone change.
Very good. Chair will now entertain a motion.
I move to adopt a resolution recommending approval to the City Council of specific plan amendment number SP-S-7, amendment number 27.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Motion made by Commissioner Castleberry, seconded by Commissioner Tolson. Call for the vote. Okay, the motion passes. The appeal period for conditional use permit, for the conditional use permit is 14 days. The appeal period is 5 days for the specific plan amendment. There is no appeal period for the general plan amendment or zone change, and the items will proceed to the City Council with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. We will go on with the remainder of the meeting. Oral communications and reports.
Thank you, Chairman Hodge. I do not have a specific date for this item going to the City Council, but it will be renoticed again at the appropriate time. Just one item to update. This past month, Jennifer Santos, Senior Planner Jennifer Santos, and myself made a series of presentations to the 4 neighborhood councils. This was regarding a ordinance text amendment to add a microbrewery definition to allow it within our industrial zones. We received feedback from each of the 4 neighborhood councils. This was actually a item that was directed by the City Council for us to bring forward. And that item will now be coming next to the Planning Commission at an upcoming public hearing, and then eventually, ultimately, all the way back to the City Council for review and approval. So looking forward to bringing that one to you shortly. But otherwise, no other news updates for today.
Planning Commission, do any commissioners have anything to report?
No.
Mr. Tolson? Okay. Mobile Home Rent Mediation Board?
None today?
Tree Advisory Board?
Nothing today.
This concludes the meeting of June 19, 2019. The next scheduled meeting will be in August, as I recall, 7, 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see the signage worked.